Hi everybody, welcome to Primetime Mitch. This is a quick review and it is a movie I've been waiting for some time and one that is very dear to my heart, and that is The Iron Claw. Written and directed by Sean Durkin, this movie is a biopic depicting the tragic story of the Von Eric family. I am a huge wrestling fan, and in particular a fan of classic wrestling. I love the 80s territory days, big fan of old school WCW, and I grew up as a child with the early 90s WWF, now WWE. I was very curious as to what direction this movie was going to go in because it is such a heart-wrenching subject. And for fans of wrestling, if you are going to go down this road, you are going to get critiqued and every decision you make pulled apart. So I'm just going to, first of all, just talk about how this movie starts, take you through it in general, and I'll give my thoughts along the way. Gonna tell you now, there are spoilers in this video because I've got to have something to talk about. Otherwise, this would be a minute-long video. So if you don't want to know what happens and you haven't seen it yet, please put this in the watch later and check it out once you've seen this film. And as ever, please smash a like down below and hit that subscribe button and that notification bell for more videos of this kind, and there will be plenty of them this year. Quick review, Iron Claw, let's go. Okay, so this movie starts out with a really effective black and white shot of Fritz Von Eric in his wrestling heyday. All the old clips you see of the 60s and the 70s wrestling when in the old sports halls and the sportatorium. The cinematography in this scene is particularly good for me. It really captured the gnarly feel to those early bouts back in the day. And 𝐒𝐿 is absolutely perfectly cast as Fritz Von Eric. And it was strange really because I heard a lot of people before this movie was made and in the production saying, who the hell are they going to cast as Fritz Von Eric? There you go. And I never even thought of 𝐒𝐿, and I know his work. He was great in Mindhunter, and I never saw it until the opening credits. Obviously, Fritz, right from the beginning, is driven by the fact that he's never become the NWA heavyweight champion, never will do, and he wants his sons to do what he couldn't do. He sees everything as a conspiracy against them. They never gave us a chance. They took the chance away from us. This is how they test you. It's always a battle between the Von Erichs and the world of wrestling, the National Wrestling Alliance. It's a real one-upsmanship from the start that he drives into his sons. We get the first looks at Zac Efron as Kevin Von Eric, and he is chiseled beyond the ridiculous. I quite like the fact that he has put the effort into himself to make sure that he looks the part for this movie. I think everybody knows that Kevin was not that jacked. He certainly wasn't as jacked as 𝐒𝐈𝐊𝐿 Von Eric, actually. 𝐒𝐈𝐊𝐿 Von Eric to me was the one that looked like the superhero, the Mr. Olympia. But I think really, if you want to dig deep into this, maybe Zac Efron did this for the simple fact that he wanted to show the strength of Kevin, that he was a larger than life character because he had so much to deal with, so much on his shoulders. He's almost uncomfortably big, which tends to suggest that he's almost been forced that way because of the pressure on him with the family and from his father. You get a look at the parenting skills throughout this. It is quite uncomfortable viewing at times. There is a particular point where Fritz is laying into Mike, who's not quite the same as the rest of them, played by Stanley Simons very well. He is the lesser of his sons to Fritz. There's an incredible moment where he lists his favourite sons in order. I guess that's something that's more normal in those parts of the world than it is to a lot of us. I think sometimes we can criticize the parenting without actually realizing that it's just not our world. What is normal to some isn't normal to us. So I try to lay off criticizing him too much at this stage, but it does seem very unfair on Mike that he's listed at the bottom simply because he is smaller, he's not built like the others, and he doesn't really want to work in wrestling. For those who've done the research, Mike Von Eric was actually more interested in working as a cameraman in WCCW, the Von Eric company, and that is shown in the scene at the dinner table when he mentions the camera angles, and he is shot down by Fritz.
We're talking about wrestling, not camera angles. Your brother fought the world champion on national TV. Who gives a damn about camera angles?
And back to the parenting skills. And Maura Tierney plays the mother of the Von Erichs, Doris. And there's an incredible scene where Kevin walks in and says, "Mom, can I talk to you?" And immediately that's what your brothers are for. So you can't talk to your mother? You know, I find that amazing how that was an immediate response to speaking to her child, and she wants nothing to do with the request to speak to Fritz to lay off Mike. She believes this to be a situation that they deal with by themselves. She wants nothing to do with anything, I think, once she's given birth to them. It is somewhat sad that, to me, it looks like she's there just to produce the kids and to feed them. There's not a lot of mothering going on, and yeah, that was a real sort of uncomfortable feeling I got throughout. And in terms of Fritz, the guy is driven by his desire to bring the NWA World Heavyweight title into the Von Eric family like he couldn't do. As we go on, we see some absolutely amazing wrestling scenes, beautifully shot in the Sportatorium, which I was hoping and praying they were going to get that right, and it looked incredible. It was such a throwback to those early days. And if you never really watched wrestling in that time, in the 70s and 80s, and you look at the tag matches and the birth of the high-flying style, it is so worth going back and looking on YouTube for these clips, because you can then compare them to how the movie depicts it, and it does it brilliantly. So much respect to Zac Efron, Harris Dickinson, Jeremy Allen White for giving this their all and making it look as authentic as possible with the help of Chavo Guerrero. They looked the part, and in David Von Eric's case, he really sounded the part, because that is a struggle for Kevin at the beginning. He just cannot get those words out. He cannot promo, but David can. And he ends up, unfortunately, as is the case, overtaking Kevin in his dad's eyes and in everyone else's eyes as well, as he is the first one to get a World Heavyweight title shot. Kevin obviously failing against Harley Race in a non-title match to impress anybody. His father gave him no sympathies whatsoever. I thought Harley Race looked pretty good. I thought Kevin Anton was just a little bit sort of straight down to be Harley Race, but Harley was always quite bulky around the top. And but he did obviously do some research and try to deliver that cold, chilling sort of promo that Harley would deliver. It was okay. It was a decent portrayal. For the first half of this movie, it is quite an upbeat, fascinating journey for these brothers, and you do get that close-knit feel, which is something that Kevin Von Eric wanted to be hammered into everybody, just how close and loving these brothers were towards one another. And then you get hit with the bombshell. David's obviously not very well. That's shown at Kevin's wedding. But if you don't know the story, this is quite a moment when Kevin asks his father what's wrong, and he says that David died in his hotel room in Japan on the cusp of facing Ric Flair for the World Heavyweight title. I obviously knew a lot about this story going into it. I do a lot of research on wrestling. I know a fair bit, I would like to think. But for somebody that doesn't know, that is a real gut punch. The sad thing is we see how Fritz deals with it with regards to the remaining brothers, and it's no tears, don't show any grief kind of thing. You know, you're not a man if you cry. And unfortunately, that is something that is prevalent throughout, right the way to the finish. And it doesn't take him long to start talking about replacing David for the World Heavyweight title opportunity. In a way, I understand, because somebody needs to fill the gap and sort of do their brother proud. But at the same time, it's almost immediately afterwards. And whether or not that is entirely accurate, I don't know. But it did seem a little soon to be talking about the wrestling and the heavyweight championship when they just laid David to rest. Frustratingly, Kevin and Kerry are pitted against one another in a coin toss, to which Kerry wins. Kerry obviously the greener of the two. Kevin had obviously carried the burden of being the chosen one to go for the belt before then, and Kerry had overtaken him over time, having failed at the Olympics and become a wrestler in a short period of time. And Kerry goes on to win the World Heavyweight Championship against Ric Flair. Though this isn't actually mentioned, that was at a David Von Eric memorial show. This is where the artistic license, you can tell, comes in, because they show Kerry Von Eric saying, I can't come down, I'm struggling to come down from winning this belt, I can't believe it's finally in our family. And he goes off for a motorcycle ride and ends up having the accident which loses him his foot. Now this actually occurred 2 years after he won the belt and not on the same night. But again, for artistic purposes, they're giving you the story, just condensing it into a movie, and I'm okay with that. And maybe Kerry couldn't come down from that high. Maybe that is the problem. One thing I want to point out about this is when Kerry wins the World Championship, You do not see Fritz Von Eric at any point during those scenes. There is no mention of him finally getting hold of the NWA title and having it in the family like he has gone on about for the first half of the movie. It is very strange how he is not in those scenes when it finally happens. Make of that what you will. Possibly that in a roundabout way is to show just how it wasn't worth it. As Kerry struggles with his now disability, the pressure is now on Mike Von Eric to get in the ring, and he doesn't want to, but he has to because his father wants to increase the chance. He doesn't want to do it, but obviously this obsession that Fritz has with getting his sons in the business, he doesn't want to do it. He wants to be a musician. But Fritz is absolutely determined to get his sons into this business, each and every one of them, showing that one World Heavyweight Championship just isn't going to be enough. Mike, under the tutelage of Kevin, tries his best, but he is injured at a show, damaging his shoulder. This is obviously true to life. He had a shoulder surgery shortly afterwards, and there are complications, and this is where you start feeling at this point like there is some sort of curse, because he goes into toxic shock syndrome and slips into a coma. Though he makes it through, he's just not the same kid anymore. There's obviously some brain damage there, and I think one of the saddest parts of this movie is seeing Mike trying to play guitar and trying to go back to what he loves and what he actually wanted to do, and he finds out he can't do it, and that is a last straw for him. You are well on the way at that point to the dark swing that this movie takes. They combine it for artistic purposes with Kevin and Kerry arguing in the ring when Kerry is determined to wrestle again, and they are fighting in the ring for real, and in the background you have Mike walking through the woods on what is a final journey. Obviously, I don't know if that happened or not. I think that is purely for the movie's purpose, but it does serve a very strong and powerful purpose. It's heartbreaking to see Kevin not wanting to connect with his family for the fear that it'll happen to them. His children, or his child, I think at that point, are very young. I know David Von Eric in reality had an infant daughter that died as a baby, and that wasn't obviously shown, but I think it's implied by the fact that he says, I don't want them to get the curse, even though his son's just a baby at that point. You do see a lot of it through Kevin's eyes and how he is struggling to hold it together, even though this tragedy is just raining down on him. And I think when I've watched other reviews of this movie and other reactions of this movie, the real final straw for everyone watching when it comes to breaking them is the deterioration of Kerry Von Eric. Widely known as being a very, very likable guy. When I was a kid, I loved the Texas Tornado. I have fond memories of him beating Mr. Perfect for the Intercontinental Championship at SummerSlam. That is actually shown in the movie, though I think they underplay that a little too much for me. I didn't just like the 1, 2, 3, yay, attaboy Kerry. I think that was a bigger moment than it was actually given credit for. But from then on, he does spiral, and Kerry never gets near the WWF Championship, and he is pretty soon without the Intercontinental Championship as well, and relegated to house shows. He would later be released due to the problems he was having, and all this is put together in a couple of scenes, one at Christmas with the family where he is sort of under the influence of drink, and another on the telephone to Kevin in quite a heart-wrenching scene where he is telling Kevin he can't do this anymore. It's got to him. It's got to him. The curse has got to him. And Kevin can't get to him in time. Again, another scene which didn't happen the way it was played out, but was played out for the purpose of Kevin's story when Kevin finds Kerry at the ranch. There is some infuriating dialogue by Fritz at this point saying, you know, he came to you and you didn't help him, when Fritz did absolutely nothing himself and hadn't done from the beginning. Probably the most emotional scene in this movie is when Kerry meets up with the three brothers on the jetty. I've heard some people say that this scene was unnecessary. I think it was necessary because of the note that said, tonight I walk with my brothers. Again, I'm not sure. Please in the comments drop this, because I know a lot about this, but sometimes there are holes in it. I know that Bret Hart stated in his autobiography that Kerry was constantly making reference to meeting up with his brothers again. I don't think he actually left a note saying that, but it was put in note form to acknowledge what he had actually said to other talent. So I think the scene of him meeting up with them afterwards, it took the edge off the devastation. I think the movie ends in a nice way, if a little tear-jerking. Having the kids say what they said to their dad at the end, to Kevin saying, you know, we'll be your brothers, was nice. I'm not sure. It felt slightly scripted at that point. I did empathise entirely with Kevin when he said, I used to be a brother. That sort of sums up, I think, how he must feel and how he must have felt for quite some time. Overall, I loved this movie because it was a story that needed to be told. Kevin Von Eric's strength is phenomenal considering what he has been through. We mustn't forget as well that there was another brother, and this is just the fact that the real life story is more tragic than the one that we see in the movie is baffling, but it really did happen. And there was another brother, Fritz Von Eric, who unfortunately took his own life as well. So again, under the stress and the pressure of wanting to be a professional wrestler, but his body just wouldn't allow it. I think combining Chris's story with Mike's in the form of Mike was a bold move, but I do think it works. I know some people think it's absolutely ludicrous to leave one of the brothers out, and maybe they should have been a bit more ballsy and just gone for it, but I'm okay with it. I get why people might not be, but I am okay with it. If I was going to aim another criticism, everybody knows the casting of Ric Flair isn't great. Aaron Dean Eisenberg tries. He just doesn't have the look. He doesn't have a big enough face. I know that sounds ridiculous, but he just doesn't. It's just a damn shame that Dustin Hoffman is not 25 years younger.
Bless you, child. Good form, Jack.
He would have had not only the look, but the crazy Bulu attitude that Ric Flair had in those promos. There are times when Eisenberg almost gets it.
Nothing happening. Second rate.
He says certain words that really do sound like Rick, but then he goes back to that boyish voice, which just doesn't fit him at all. But I will give him credit for trying. He didn't cast himself. So I know Kevin Von Eric really liked the film. I think he said that the depiction of his father made him look, I think, pretty rank. And he said he was an honourable man and his word was his word. And obviously I don't know Kevin and I would never want to pass judgment. You know, he always had a lot of love for his father. I think that is just him being very respectful of his father and wanting to defend him. That is shown in the movie. He's very loyal. They all call him Sir, which I think is a thing down there anyway. But there are an awful lot of contrasting statements out there that suggest that this actually played down how bad Fritz was. So I don't know. Again, it's something to read up on. You can always go back and watch some classic footage as well. Sometimes you can sort of get a feeler and understanding of the way somebody is. So research is key there, I think. There was a great comment, I think it was from 𝐒𝐈𝐊𝐄𝐈𝐁, where she'd said that the Iron Claw was a representation of the grip that Fritz had on his boys and his family. I mean, that's a brilliant way of looking at it. It's not just the devastating finishing hold that we knew from the Von Eric family when they were in the ring. It is almost a metaphor for what is actually happening to the family in general. One or two scenes I think didn't need to be in. When they take Mike out to the bar to play, I don't think that needed to be as long as it was. I don't think we really needed to see Kevin sort of coming of age, shall we say, in the car outside the venue. I think that scene probably went on a little longer than it needed to. Sometimes I feel like there was certain bits of dialogue which were almost preaching to you a little bit. There's a conversation with Kevin and Pam, played with gusto by Lily James, where she asks what wrestling is and whether it's fake or not and all that, and Kevin then comes back with the realities of the business. I don't know how true to life that is. Again, if Kevin had a hand in this, and it must have happened, I guess, but I feel like if she was at a wrestling show, I don't know why she would ask a question that non-fans ask. Again, I don't know the accuracy of it. If you do know, please drop it in the comments. So yeah, please go check out the Iron Claw. So much work went into that movie, from the actors to the directors to the cinematography. It is a beautiful movie. It is very sad. Take some tissues if you are on the thin ledge when it comes to emotional response. But certainly if you're a wrestling fan, I suggest you watch it and then watch some of the footage from those times. It's a wonderful time. It's what built what we have today, and it is a story that you should never ever forget. and can learn from on a personal level. That was my quick review of the Iron Claw, guys. Thank you so much for joining me again. I really enjoyed reviewing this movie because it has such a meaning to me. If you like this video, there'll be plenty more coming along soon. It's not just horror content, it's every genre. I just have a little leaning towards horror. So if you like the videos and you enjoyed this video and you want to talk about it, please drop your comments below. Please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Share this about. I want my army to grow, and it's certainly doing that at the moment. So thank you guys, and I'll see you soon.